I remember the first day she told me she had a UTI. I didn't really know much about it, just that it made her uncomfortable, probably in pain, and that she needed someone around to make life a little easier. And I was ready. I don't usually brag about being helpful, but there's something about the person you care about that makes you want to do everything you can. So I did. That morning, I woke up early, even earlier than usual. The sunlight was just starting to slip through the blinds, painting stripes on the wooden floor. I had this strange mix of calm and purpose as I went about the kitchen. I started boiling water for tea, chopping vegetables for a simple soup she liked, the kind that felt gentle, soft, comforting. I didn't think about it as an obligation. I genuinely wanted to make her feel a little better. Maybe it was the sense of purpose, or maybe it was the quiet pride that comes from knowing you're helping someone you care about. By the time she finally shuffled into the kitchen, still looking tired, rubbing her eyes, I had everything ready. I smiled, trying to hide the little exhaustion I already felt from waking up early, preparing breakfast, making the soup, and organizing the small corner of the kitchen I knew she'd sit at. She smiled back, faint, a little appreciative, but mostly still in that foggy, uncomfortable haze that comes with being sick. That alone, her slight smile, was enough for me. As the day went on, I fell into a rhythm. I cleaned the dishes she left behind, folded the laundry she hadn't gotten to, and kept checking in on her. "Do you want water?" I asked. "Do you need to lie down?" I made small gestures that felt huge in my mind, each one a reminder that I was there for her, that I was doing something important, meaningful. It wasn't glamorous, not in the slightest. Cooking soup, loading the dishwasher, wiping down countertops, these were small, mundane things. But there was a certain satisfaction in them. Satisfaction in the quiet act of service, in the sense that my effort mattered. Every time she muttered a thank you, every time she let out a soft sigh of relief, it felt like validation that what I was doing had purpose. I started to notice small things about her routine, little patterns that I could adjust to make life easier. For instance, she always liked her tea a certain way, warm but not too hot, a splash of honey, and the teacup set perfectly on the little coaster she liked. I started anticipating it before she even asked, setting it down with a gentle smile. It felt like a secret understanding, a tiny bond forming in these small moments. Evenings were a little different. We'd sit in the living room, her curled up under a blanket, and I'd work quietly on my laptop or read a book while keeping her company. Occasionally, I'd ask if she needed anything, and she'd shake her head, eyes half closed. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to know I was needed, enough to know I could help. I didn't think about boundaries at this point. It didn't feel like work. It didn't feel like I was sacrificing anything significant. I just did what felt natural, help her, be present, make her days a little less painful. There was a strange kind of fulfillment in it, like an invisible thread tying our lives together, one small gesture at a time. But then, of course, little things began to pile up. Baskets of laundry that didn't get folded fast enough, a stack of unread books she left on the floor, and most glaringly, a growing pile of dishes that somehow never seemed to reach the dishwasher. At first, I ignored it, thinking, it's fine. She's sick. She'll get to it when she can. And I mean, it wasn't like I was unwilling to help. I guess I expected her to do the small things she could handle. The first week was like this, a delicate balance of care, anticipation, and quiet satisfaction. But underneath it all, a faint sense of tension started to creep in. Not anger, Not really, but something softer and subtler. A worry that maybe, just maybe, I was giving more than I should. And yet, every time she looked at me with a faint smile, I brushed it aside. That little smile, that tiny acknowledgement, seemed to justify everything. I was doing what I thought was right. I was being a good boyfriend. At least, that's what I told myself. Little did I know. Those small gestures of love and care, the quiet moments of being attentive, were slowly setting the stage for a conflict I wasn't expecting. The kind of conflict that starts with something almost invisible, something so small that at first you don't even recognize it. It was just a few dishes. Just one little chore she could do, that's all. But as the days went on, as the dishes piled higher and higher on her side of the room, as her energy returned in little bursts while my exhaustion grew quietly in the background, that small thing started to feel bigger and bigger. And that, I would learn, is often how the cracks begin, not with a massive argument or a dramatic betrayal, but with tiny, almost invisible signs that something in the balance has shifted. By the end of that first week, I could feel the difference. Not loud, not overt, but a subtle shift in the air. I was tired, yes, but more than that, I was aware. Aware that my care was constant, my effort relentless, and yet, in some small way, unappreciated, and that awareness, soft as it was the first spark. The spark that would eventually flare into frustration, suspicion, and a confrontation that would change everything. I didn't know it at the time. I just thought, I'm doing the right thing. I'm being a good boyfriend. She's sick. She needs me. And that thought would carry me through the days to come, right up until the point where even my patience would be tested beyond anything I expected. After about a week of taking care of her, I started realizing that if we just let things slide, the place would turn into chaos. I didn't want the house to feel like one person was carrying everything, and I definitely didn't want to burn out. So, I decided to set up some simple rules at home, nothing strict, just some basics so that both of us could cooperate. I sat down next to her while she was curled up on the sofa, holding her warm cup of tea. "Hey," I began gently, "I was thinking, maybe we can try something like house rules. Not anything crazy, just a few things to make life easier for both of us." She glanced at me, half curious, half tired, and shrugged. "Okay, but nothing complicated," she said, weakly teasing. I smiled. "Just small stuff. Like everyone takes responsibility for their own dishes, their own laundry, and keeping their stuff in place. I'll handle the cooking, the common cleaning, and the rest we can figure out together." She nodded. "Sounds fair." At that moment, I felt a wave of relief. Finally, I thought I had found a way to balance things without constantly nagging, while keeping the house somewhat organized. But of course, reality wasn't so neat. Over the next few days, cracks began to show. She was genuinely tired, but also sometimes forgetful or careless. The dishes started to pile up, the laundry wasn't folded, books still scattered across the floor. Each time, I tried to remind her gently, "Hey, remember to put your dishes in the dishwasher." I'd say it once, twice, and it seemed like my reminders just floated in the air. I felt a slow, simmering tension growing. Not anger right away, not outrage, just a mix of frustration and disappointment. I had been doing so much without complaint, and now, reminding her about one tiny thing felt exhausting. I kept asking myself, am I expecting too much? But the answer kept echoing in my head. No, It's just one small thing, and she's capable of doing it. I didn't want all my effort to mean nothing over a few details. One afternoon, sunlight spilling across the living room floor, highlighting the stack of dirty dishes in the corner, I decided to try a more serious approach. I sat down and talked to her calmly. I know you're tired, and I get it. But I think if you just took care of your own dishes, things would be way easier. I don't want to have to keep reminding or doing them for you. She looked at me, wide-eyed, a little annoyed. You're overreacting. Do you always have to control everything? I was surprised, but I stayed calm. I'm not trying to control. I just want us both to take responsibility. I've been doing a lot for you already. There was a subtle shift in the air, not huge, not dramatic, but enough to create a quiet tension. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the afternoon sunlight through the windows. I realized that sometimes a tiny thing could destabilize a relationship, especially when both people are young, inexperienced, and still learning how to communicate. Over the next few days, I kept reinforcing the house rules through consistent, quiet habits: dishes in the dishwasher after meals, laundry in the baskets, books back on the shelves. I did it silently, without scolding or nagging, just trying to keep things stable. But deep down, I started feeling a low-grade pressure. Every time I saw the dishes piling up, every reminder I had to give, I felt emotionally drained, not physically. It wasn't laziness. It was a sense that after giving so much, I was still dealing with small, avoidable annoyances. This feeling was a mix of love, frustration, and questioning fairness. I loved her. I wanted her to feel comfortable. I wanted to take care of her. But I also needed boundaries. Those boundaries were clear, yet fragile, easily disrupted by a few neglected dishes, a shrug, a forgotten chore. One evening, as she lay on the sofa holding her cup of tea, I sat down beside her. I know you're tired, and I don't want to stress you out. But if you could just handle the little things like your dishes, it would make things easier for me. I can take care of everything else. She sighed, half nodded, half frowned. Yeah, you keep saying the same thing anyway. I realized that no matter how I phrased it, her reaction wasn't quite what I hoped for. And that was my first lesson. Loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself completely. A healthy relationship isn't just about giving, it's about mutual effort and respect. The following days, I kept up my gentle reminders, but I also learned to observe her reactions and anticipate tense moments. Each time she forgot or overlooked something, I took a deep breath. Didn't get angry, but the simmering frustration was still there, quietly building. By the end of the week, I looked back and realized that these house rules, initially meant to keep order, were actually a mirror, reflecting the limits of each person in the relationship. Push too hard, and even the most loving gestures can feel burdensome. I also understood that relationships aren't just warm moments, small smiles, or fleeting thank you. They're built on tiny tests, subtle collisions between caring for someone and needing respect. A pile of dishes, a reminder, a shrug. These are all little signs, foreshadowing the deeper conflicts that are yet to come. It was in these quiet, emotional days that I started seeing myself more clearly, my boundaries, my limits, and how a relationship can function in a way that's not just surviving, but actually healthy. That quiet frustration, mixed with love, was preparing me for the tougher days ahead, when the pressure and conflict wouldn't be small anymore. After about 2 weeks of taking care of her and keeping up with the house rules I'd set. I started noticing something clearly. I was more exhausted than I'd ever been, not from physical labor, but from a quiet, relentless kind of frustration. At first, I was happy, genuinely happy, even seeing her more comfortable, lighter. But now, every little thing that seemed harmless piled up, creating a constant, nagging pressure that I couldn't shake. It started with the dishes in the bedroom. Such a tiny thing, yet it became a glaring sign that she wasn't fully taking responsibility for herself. Every time I reminded her, she'd shrug, sigh, or sometimes toss out a half-joking, half-annoyed, "You do it then." At first I laughed it off, thinking maybe she was just tired or forgetful. But week after week, nothing changed, and the frustration began creeping into every corner of my mind. I didn't complain about anything else. I cooked, cleaned the living room, wiped down the kitchen, even did her laundry quietly, without a word of complaint. But the dishes, such a small, insignificant task compared to everything else, became the thing that made me feel invisible, like my effort wasn't being noticed. And this time, the exhaustion wasn't just physical. It started turning into a low simmer of anger mixed with a twinge of hurt. One afternoon, sunlight slanting through the window, I walked into the room and froze at the stack of dishes. I took a deep breath and tried to remind her gently, "Hey, don't forget to put these in the dishwasher." She looked at me, a flicker of irritation crossing her face, but did nothing. A mix of sadness and anger welled up inside me. I caught myself thinking, why do I have to keep reminding her about something so small? Is she taking advantage of my care? I began noticing more little details. Her voice would light up when talking about friends or other activities, full of energy, while I was worn down. Why could she be happy outside the house, but couldn't handle something as simple as loading the dishwasher? I started to wonder, was her UTI really that debilitating, or was it just a convenient excuse to avoid a few small responsibilities? Each day, the frustration grew sharper. I tried to remind myself, I love her. I just need a little cooperation, a little effort from her side. But disappointment kept looping in my head, a dull, persistent ache that made it impossible to fully relax at home. Sometimes, I'd watch her lying on the couch, holding a cup of tea, eyes half closed, and an odd mix of feelings would surge through me, protectiveness and a desperate urge to shout, "I'm tired too. I need you to pitch in." One evening, sitting together in the living room under soft yellow light, I decided to speak a bit more honestly. "I want to be real with you," I started, keeping my voice calm but tense. "I've done a lot to help you. I don't expect you to do everything, but at least, I wish you could handle your dishes." She looked at me, startled, a mixture of guilt and irritation in her eyes. "You keep bringing it up, like I'm trying to annoy you on purpose," she replied. I bit my lip. A sharp, quiet frustration surged. Why, after 2 weeks, did one small task, something she could easily do, push me to this point? Thoughts like, is she taking advantage of me? And is this love really fair? Spun endlessly in my head. Still, part of me wanted to trust her. Maybe she really was tired. Maybe I was being too sensitive. I tried to stay calm, restraining my emotions so a minor conflict wouldn't explode into a full-blown argument in the days that followed. The frustration kept building silently. Every sight of the unrinsed dishes made me take a long breath. Every reminder was met with a shake of the head or a sigh. My mental fatigue mounted not from laziness, not from unwillingness, but from feeling subtly disrespected, even taken for granted. And it wasn't just the dishes anymore. The frustration bled into other small things. Unfolded clothes, scattered books, even fleeting words or glances. Each minor detail thickened the cloud of disappointment, creating a constant layer of tension. One afternoon, she lay on the couch, sunlight filtering softly across her face. I sighed, thinking, I've done everything I can. I've cared for her, sacrificed my time and energy, and now all I need is a little cooperation. Just a little. How hard could that be? And in that moment, I realized something crucial. Love isn't always about unconditional giving. It's also about fairness, mutual respect, and understanding your own limits. If one person keeps giving without acknowledgement or cooperation, no matter how strong the love, it will inevitably lead to mental exhaustion. By the end of the second week, frustration, disappointment, doubt, and love were all tangled together inside me, creating a messy knot of emotions. Part of me wanted to stay silent. Part of me wanted to explode. But I learned to hold back, to observe and acknowledge my feelings. Preparing for the conversation I knew would come about boundaries, respect, and my own value. And I knew that this simmering frustration, if left unresolved, would eventually reach a boiling point. It wouldn't be about the dishes anymore. It would be a direct confrontation between the need to be respected and the limit of my patience. These days, the quietly building storm frustration, disappointment, doubt, and even love was shaping a turning point in our relationship. I didn't yet know what that moment would look like, but I knew it would change everything. And this accumulation, subtle yet powerful, was leading me toward a decision I couldn't avoid. By the time we hit the third week, I was starting to feel the weight of everything I'd been doing. Not physically, was fine in that sense, but emotionally, mentally, I was drained. The small frustrations, the subtle annoyances, they weren't just passing anymore. They were building, stacking up quietly, and I could feel them pressing down every time I walked into our shared space. I'd been cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, making sure she had everything she needed to be comfortable. And I did it all silently, without complaints, without expecting anything in return, except a little cooperation. One simple thing, just one small responsibility: put her dishes in the dishwasher. That was it, but week after week, the dishes kept piling up. My reminders were met with shrugs, sighs, or worse, dismissive jokes. And slowly, I realized something that made my chest tighten. It wasn't about the dishes anymore. It was about feeling invisible, unappreciated, taken for granted. One afternoon, sunlight streaming in through the blinds, highlighting the growing mound of dirty dishes in the corner of the bedroom, I just froze for a moment. I wanted to say something, but I didn't. I felt the anger simmering beneath the surface, a quiet rage I hadn't felt before. It was subtle, but it was there, loud in my mind. I started noticing things I hadn't before: the way she laughed more freely when talking to friends, the energy she had during short outings, the little things that reminded me she was acting lively and normal, while my efforts, my sacrifices, felt completely invisible. A thought struck me: is she really still sick? Or is this just a way to dodge responsibility? I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to trust her. But the doubt was there, nagging at me, mixing with my exhaustion and frustration. And every little pile of dishes, every shrug, every sit was like fuel to the fire inside me. A quiet anger that kept building, I remember one evening, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the mess, trying to breathe and calm myself. I wanted to approach it with patience, with understanding, but the frustration was overwhelming. I whispered to myself, "I've done everything for you. I've given my time, my energy, my effort. And for what? Just this one tiny thing, and it's like I don't even exist." And in that moment, I realized something important about myself and about relationships. Love isn't just about giving unconditionally. It's about balance, mutual respect, and recognition. If one person keeps giving and the other keeps taking without contributing in even the smallest ways, even the strongest affection will start to erode. So that night, I decided it was time to set boundaries more firmly. I wasn't going to yell, I wasn't going to explode, but I needed her to understand that my patience wasn't infinite. I needed to communicate that my love didn't mean she could ignore her responsibilities. "Look," I said gently, but with more firmness than before, "I've been doing a lot to take care of you. I want to help you, I really do. But I also need you to meet me halfway. Putting your dishes in the dishwasher isn't much to ask. It's about respect, and about not taking each other for granted." Her reaction was immediate. She looked at me, a mixture of surprise, guilt, and defensiveness flashing across her face. "You're acting like I don't care at all. I've been sick, and you're making this about what? Some dishes?" I took a deep breath. "It's not about the dishes. It's about effort, recognition, and respect. You can't expect me to keep giving endlessly if you don't do anything in return." There was a silence after that, the kind that fills the room with tension so thick you can almost touch it. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was powerful. It was the kind of moment where things that had been simmering under the surface for weeks suddenly come into focus, and I could feel the invisible scale tipping, slowly but surely. My patience, my goodwill, my sacrifices, they all had limits. And if those limits were ignored, the relationship itself would start to fracture. I wasn't angry in a shouting way. It wasn't explosive. It was a quiet, firm realization. I deserved to be seen, to be recognized, and to be treated as an equal. And if she couldn't meet me halfway, then something had to change. That night, lying in bed after the conversation, I reflected on everything that had happened. Every meal I'd cooked, every chore I'd handled, every small gesture of care had all been motivated by love. But love alone wasn't enough to sustain a relationship when basic respect and responsibility were missing. It was a lesson I had to learn the hard way. Sacrificing without recognition is exhausting, and eventually it breeds resentment. The love that once felt effortless was now weighed down by fatigue, frustration, and an annoying sense of unfairness. And in the quiet of that night, I made a decision for myself. I would continue to care, but I would also protect my boundaries. I would not let my love be taken for granted. I would not let my efforts be invisible. And I knew, deep down, that this boundary setting would either bring understanding and cooperation, or force a confrontation that couldn't be avoided. The air in the room felt heavy, but in a strange way, there was relief too. Relief in recognizing my limits. Relief in acknowledging that love is not synonymous with endless giving, and that being honest about what I could and could not tolerate was not selfish, it was necessary. And so, the stage was set. The tension was real. The frustration had built to a point where it could no longer remain silent. And I knew that, sooner or later, this quiet storm would demand to be addressed either through compromise, understanding, or confrontation. It was a turning point. Not explosive, not cinematic, but powerful in its quiet intensity. The kind of moment that changes the dynamic of a relationship, shifts the balance of power, and forces both people to confront their own roles, responsibilities, and respect for one another. And for me, it was the moment I realized caring isn't just about giving, it's about being seen, being valued, and being treated as an equal partner. By the time the next 2 weeks rolled around after our serious conversation about the dishes, I realized one thing very clearly. My patience was running out. Every day, walking into the room and seeing the growing pile of dirty dishes, the frustration wasn't subtle anymore. It was dancing in my head, making my heart race and my body tense. This wasn't casual irritation. It was built-up anger from days and weeks, a mix of bitterness and desperation. That day, she was lying on the sofa, holding her phone, laughing with friends. The afternoon light poured through the window, highlighting her energy and liveliness, a sharp, almost painful contrast to the silent efforts and sacrifices I had been making. I stood there for a moment, frozen, and suddenly, the emotions exploded. "I can't believe this," I shouted, my voice louder than I intended, full of both disappointment and anger. She jumped, eyes wide with surprise and fear. What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath, trying not to yell, but my volume was still high. "I've done everything for you. Cooked, cleaned, done your laundry. And all I ask for is one tiny thing. Just put your dishes in the dishwasher. Just one thing, and you can't even do that." She went silent, her eyes wide. No laughter, no jokes. The air between us felt heavy enough to cut with a knife. I could feel my heart pounding, frustration and anger swirling together. All the days I'd cared for her, all the sacrifices, all the patience, it had turned into a mountain of unrecognized effort. And I realized then, this was the breaking point, the moment where quiet endurance comes to an end, where all the simmering emotions surface. She took a long breath, her voice trembling slightly. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I'm already tired, can't you see?" I shook my head, exhausted emotionally. "It's not about being physically tired. I get that you're sick, but this isn't about you anymore. This is about me, about everything I've done that's gone unnoticed. Do you know how that feels?" A silence followed, then she said sharply, "You're making me feel guilty. You want to control me." But this time, I didn't back down. I was too tired to stay silent. "I'm not controlling you. I just want cooperation, respect, and fairness. I've done everything for you without complaints, and now I'm asking for the simplest thing possible. Can you do it or not?" She looked shocked, angry, and confused all at once. The tension between us was taut like a stretched string. I saw clearly that relationships often collapse not because of huge problems, but because of countless small injustices left unresolved. Minutes passed in silence, just the soft hum of the ceiling fan. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension exceed what I could bear. I told myself, if she doesn't understand this, if she doesn't respect my efforts and limits, everything is going to change. Forever. After a few moments, she stood up, voice cold. "If you can't handle it, then fine. I'll go stay at my mum's for a while, give us both some space." I was startled, but I realized this might be an opportunity to reflect. "Fine. If you need distance, go. But I'm not going to silently endure this anymore." I won't let myself be taken advantage of, and I won't let this love become a burden just for me. She didn't reply, just gave me a look I couldn't read, then left for her mum's. The door closed behind her, leaving a quiet emptiness in the apartment that had once been filled with laughter, cooking sounds, and intimate moments. I stood there, feeling both relieved and hollow. Relief because I had finally voiced everything inside me. Hollow because I realized the relationship wasn't the same anymore, at least for now. I wondered, can this love survive? Can we understand each other enough to get through this? That night, lying in bed, I reflected on all the past days, the meals I had cooked, the tea I had made, the nights I had stayed awake caring for her hand now. All of it seemed unappreciated. But I also realized something crucial. I have to put myself first before over-sacrificing. Otherwise, love and care turn into a burden instead of a source of happiness. This breaking pointer, moment filled with overwhelming emotion, was pivotal. It exposed the tensions and small injuries that had been ignored for weeks, and set the stage for the boundaries I needed to maintain, my own value in the relationship, and, although I didn't know what would happen next, one thing was clear. I had changed the way I viewed love, sacrifice, and mutual respect. This was the moment that would determine everything, either understanding and compromise or separation. But no matter the outcome, I had learned an important lesson. Loving someone does not mean losing yourself. After she went to stay at her mum's, the apartment suddenly felt painfully quiet. No laughter, no clinking of cups or plates, just silence and emptiness that forced me to confront my true feelings. It wasn't the dishes or chores themselves that had drained me, but the feeling of being unappreciated and left out, even in love and care in the first few days. I tried to keep busy with other things, cleaning, exercising, listening to music, but there was still an underlying emptiness, a subtle ache. Every time I remembered the pile of dishes, her laughing with friends, full of energy as if she hadn't been sick, a part of me wondered, was she really ill, or was it just an excuse to dodge responsibility? But gradually, I began to think more deeply. I didn't want to stay stuck in anger or suspicion. I wanted to understand why things escalated to a breaking point, and more importantly, how I felt and what I needed in this relationship. These quiet days helped me see a lot more. First, about myself, I realized that I had placed too much focus on taking care of her and neglected my own needs and boundaries. I loved her, but love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to the point of exhaustion and frustration. Love also requires fairness, cooperation, and above all, mutual respect. Second, about the relationship, the small disagreements, the dishes, chores, little details turned out to be indicators of how each of us handled responsibility and recognition. If one person always gives and the other never reciprocates, even the strongest love will slowly erode. I realized I wasn't being overly sensitive or petty. A relationship requires both people to put in effort to maintain balance. During this time apart, I also discovered something unexpected. Distance sometimes makes emotions clearer. When I wasn't caught up in daily frustrations, I could look back objectively. The moments of care, the meals I cooked, the chores I did, all of it was evidence of my love and dedication. But at the same time, I recognized my own limits and the importance of being respected. One evening, sitting by the window, looking at the warm lights flickering in neighboring apartments, I whispered to myself, I have loved and cared for her wholeheartedly. But love doesn't mean being taken for granted. I deserve recognition, cooperation, and fairness in this relationship. The distance also gave me time to reflect on her capacity and attitude. I asked myself, does she realize my efforts? Is she willing to cooperate and respect my boundaries? Or is it time for me to let go to protect myself? These questions weren't just doubts. They were a deeper awareness of the relationship and my own value. Each passing day, I felt a shift within myself. Before, even the smallest mistake would make me frustrated or angry. Now, with distance, I learned to observe my emotions without reacting immediately, to distinguish between what truly mattered and what was temporary negativity. One afternoon, while tidying up the living room, I noticed items she had left behind, her favorite mug, a book she'd been reading. Instead of feeling irritated, I felt a gentle emptiness, accompanied by the awareness, I have done all I could. I loved wholeheartedly, and now it's time to reflect on myself before deciding what comes next. During these moments, I also started writing down my thoughts, my emotions, frustrations, sacrifices, love, and doubts. Writing helped me release tension and organize my emotions and thoughts. I realized that no one should sacrifice unconditionally without recognition. No one should feel mentally exhausted in a relationship just because the other person isn't willing to cooperate, even in small ways. But this distance also made me question the future. Can we reconnect with both of us changed? Will she recognize and respect my efforts? Or is this the time to let go, to protect myself? These questions weren't easy to answer, but they helped me understand my worth and my right to be respected in love. During her absence, I felt a quiet maturity growing within me. Before small issues could trigger anger or disappointment, now I learned to observe and analyze my feelings, to define my boundaries, and most importantly, to value myself before loving others. I realized that love isn't always about happiness, smiles, or sweet words. It's also lessons about boundaries, fairness, and self-worth. Temporary distance isn't the end, it's a chance for both people to reflect on the relationship, their emotions, and their behaviors. And I knew that when she came back, nothing would be the same. I had changed, matured, and I would know how to set boundaries, protect myself, and love more wisely. This distance, though uncomfortable and lonely, was a precious opportunity to recognize what matters, what deserves respect, and what shouldn't be over-sacrificed. I ended that day with a sense of gentle peace, accompanied by clarity. Love is about giving, but also about being recognized. Caring for someone is important, but so is protecting yourself. This distance taught me both, to appreciate others without losing myself. The day she returned, I didn't know how to feel, nervous, anxious, curious all at once. She closed the door behind her, and her eyes met mine, filled with shyness, remorse, and a hint of tension. The air in the room was heavy, but different from before. It carried expectation, caution, and the subtle possibility of change in both of us. I took a deep breath, trying not to let my emotions take over immediately. "Hi," I said, calm but firm. She gave a small, slightly awkward smile. "Hi." A quiet moment passed. I could see in her eyes that the distance had helped both of us see ourselves and the relationship more clearly. At the same time, I couldn't help but wonder, has she really changed? Does she recognize my efforts and sacrifices? We sat down, and this time, instead of letting emotions explode, I chose to speak honestly but controlled. The past 2 weeks have been difficult, but necessary. I've thought a lot about us, about my feelings, and about my limits. I love you, but loving doesn't mean I can sacrifice unconditionally. She remained silent, listening, and then, her voice trembling but sincere. I know you've done so much for me, and I let you endure too much. I'm sorry. Truly, I looked at her, and the emptiness I had felt began to ease slightly. But I didn't let my guard down completely. I need you to understand one thing. Love isn't just about receiving, it's also about giving. I want us to share responsibilities, to work together. It's not about counting small tasks, it's about mutual respect and fairness. She nodded, and this time I saw genuine sincerity in her eyes. I understand. I'll try, not just for you, but for me and for this relationship. Part of me felt relieved, but another part remained cautious. I realized that words alone weren't enough. Her actions would have to show change. I decided to test this, but this time with clear boundaries. Small tasks like dishes, cleaning, and daily responsibilities had to be completed, not to control her, but to establish limits and build balance. The following days were a test. I observed, and she began doing things she used to neglect. She put her dishes in the dishwasher, tidied up, and participated in household tasks without reminders. Each action made me realize that she was genuinely changing, and our love had a chance to grow in a more mature way. But this process wasn't just about her. I also learned to manage my emotions, not overreact to small mistakes, and maintain boundaries. I realized that a mature relationship requires communication, understanding, and flexibility, while each person must protect their own value. One evening, as we ate dinner together, I looked at her and saw her eyes serious yet gentle. And I thought to myself, I've survived the emotional trials, and we've both grown. I decided to fully open up and share my feelings over the time apart. Frustration, doubts, but also love and deep care. She listened quietly, eyes glistening, and when I finished, she said, I know. I understand, and I won't let this happen again. I also want to learn to love more wisely, not just to receive, but to give, and to respect both you and myself. That was the emotional climax. The moment we truly saw each other and realized that love isn't only sweet feelings, but also growth, learning, and genuine companionship. No shouting, no arguing, just recognition and mature decision-making. From that point on, our relationship entered a new phase. A love no longer based solely on fleeting emotions, but on respect, fairness, and cooperation. I realized that the distance and conflict were necessary lessons for both of us to grow. And if we both learned from them, our love could become stronger. That night, lying in bed after dinner, watching her smile gently, I thought, I've learned that loving means giving, but also knowing your limits. Caring for someone also means respecting yourself. We will build a mature love, based not just on feelings, but on actions and awareness. And in that moment, I felt a new sense of hope and mature beginning. A love that has faced challenges and is ready to grow sustainably. After the emotional reunion, our relationship began to enter a phase of recovery. But recovery didn't mean returning to the way things were. It wasn't as simple as saying sorry or speaking heartfelt words. Recovery is a process of rebuilding trust, step by step, through consistent actions and commitment. The first day after her return felt both familiar and strange. The small routines around the house, the laughter, the shared meals, all of it was there, but it no longer felt effortless. I realized that both of us needed time to adjust to the changes in our relationship. Learning how to walk together while still respecting personal boundaries, she began taking initiative in small but meaningful ways, putting her dishes in the dishwasher, tidying up things she had left messy before, and sometimes reminding me to rest when she saw me overworking. These seemingly simple actions carried great significance in rebuilding trust. They showed me that she truly wanted to change, not just in words, but through consistent behavior. However, I didn't completely let go of the lingering doubts. In the past, I had questioned whether she had really been sick or just avoiding responsibility. Now, I learned to observe her behavior rather than judge immediately, to recognize genuine change in actions and attitude. Every time she acted responsibly, my trust was reinforced. Yet I maintained a healthy level of caution to protect myself if patterns repeated. One evening, as we sat drinking tea after dinner, I decided to open up and share my thoughts. I know we've had conflicts in the past, but I believe that if we both put in effort, things can get better. I want us to build trust and love based on actions, not just words. She looked at me, her eyes glistening, and nodded gently. I want that too. I want to show through my actions that I can change and build a lasting love with you. After that conversation, we began establishing new routines in our relationship. We divided household responsibilities more clearly, no longer assuming that one person had to carry the full load. When one person completed a task, the other acknowledged and appreciated it instead of taking it for granted. Gradually, cooperation and mutual respect became the new foundation of our love. Recovery, however, didn't mean everything went smoothly. There were small setbacks. She would sometimes forget to put dishes in the dishwasher, or I would forget to remind her because I was busy. These little moments became tests of trust and patience. I learned to stay calm, communicate directly without judgment, and she learned to take responsibility instead of making excuses. Through this process, I realized something important. Trust cannot be restored instantly. It is the result of consistent actions, transparent communication, and genuine commitment from both sides. Every small, responsible action from her reinforced my trust, and my patience and respect reassured her and motivated her to maintain the changes. One day, while we were tidying the kitchen together, she looked at me and said, "You know, I never realized before how important these small things are. I see now that true love isn't just about feelings, it's about actions, care, and respect for each other." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of relief. Me too. I realized that love isn't just about sacrifice, it's about knowing your limits, acknowledging and appreciating each other's efforts. Moments like this made me realize that a relationship can become stronger after a crisis if both partners learn to grow together. The distance, the conflicts, and the challenges weren't just pain, they were valuable lessons about love, respect, and trust. In the following weeks, we continued practicing transparent communication, sharing feelings, discussing responsibilities, planning for the future, and resolving minor disagreements before they became major issues. Consistency in actions and attitudes gradually rebuilt solid trust, creating a stable foundation for our love. One evening, sitting together on the sofa, I held her hand and said, "I know we're not perfect, but I see that we're learning to love in a more mature way. I believe that if we continue to work together, we will grow stronger every day." She smiled, eyes full of trust. I believe that too. I will never forget this lesson, and I want us to build a love truly based on trust and respect. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of recovery, not just in the relationship, but in our mutual growth. We realized that love isn't just about sweet feelings, it's about actions, commitment, and the ability to learn from challenges. This period became a crucial turning point, marking the recovery and development of our love, where both of us understood that loving isn't just sacrifice, it's walking together, respecting each other, and building lasting trust. I ended that day feeling light and hopeful. We had learned to love maturely, not just through emotions, but through actions and commitment. And from here, our love could grow stronger than ever. A month after she came back, our relationship seemed more stable. The major conflicts had been resolved, good habits were starting to form, and trust was being rebuilt step by step. But I knew that the real tests weren't over. Every relationship, especially after a crisis, needs a final challenge to confirm the growth and commitment of both partners. That challenge came. Naturally, she was busy with schoolwork and personal projects, and I was busy with freelance work. External pressures reduced the time we could spend together, and our new routines were occasionally disrupted. One evening, I came home late and noticed dishes still on the table, and an old sense of worry and doubt crept back into my mind. Instead of exploding or blaming her, I took a deep breath and chose to communicate calmly and clearly. Hey, I've been busy all day, and I noticed a few dishes haven't been put away. I know you've been busy too, but can we finish them together? She looked at me, slightly flustered, and replied, I'm tired and busy too, but I'll take care of it right now. Thank you for patiently reminding me without getting angry. In that moment, I realized that true maturity isn't about never having problems. It's about how both of you handle issues when they arise. Instead of conflict, we chose cooperation, communication, and mutual respect in our words and actions. The following weeks became a final test of our long-term commitment. Whenever a small problem came up, dishes, chores, personal time, we didn't let it escalate. Instead, we tried to understand each other's situation, stayed patient, and supported one another. This was clear evidence that we had learned to love in a mature way, balancing sacrifice with individual needs. One night, as we sat on the balcony gazing at the stars, I decided to ask an important question after everything we've been through. Are you truly ready to commit to me long term? Not just in words, but through actions, cooperation, and daily respect. She looked at me, her eyes serious but determined. I've thought about this a lot. I want to commit not just with words, but through the way I act, the way I change, and the way I stand by you. I want us to build a lasting love based on trust and respect. Hearing her say that, I felt a sense of relief and completeness. But I also realized that commitment isn't a destination, it's an ongoing journey. We had overcome major challenges, but there would still be many more in the future. This time, though, we were mature enough to face them together, solve them, and keep moving forward. One afternoon, while cooking dinner together, I watched her smile and thought to myself, we've made it through every trial, and now our love isn't just based on feelings, it's grounded in actions, maturity, and genuine commitment. I could clearly feel that this final challenge was proof of the strength of mature love. It didn't just confirm that we were ready to be together long term. It showed our ability to learn, be patient, and grow as individuals within a relationship. That evening, as we sat on the sofa holding hands, I said, "I know we're not perfect, but I believe that if we keep practicing what we've learned, we'll be stronger than any challenge. I want to commit to building a lasting love with you." She smiled, her eyes shining with trust. "I want that too. We'll grow together and love fully." In that moment, I realized a true turning point. The final test had shown that we hadn't just overcome the past, we were ready to commit, mature, and journey together into the future. This period wasn't just the end of old conflicts, it was a new beginning, where love was strengthened through actions, trust, and long-term commitment. I ended that day feeling complete, hopeful, and reassured, knowing we were ready to continue together in a mature, lasting relationship. After overcoming the final challenge, we didn't just feel relief, we realized that the real journey was still ahead. Love isn't always smooth. It's a combination of peaceful moments, continuous effort, and the ability to face difficulties together. We understood that passing a test isn't the end, it's the beginning of a more mature, the deeper phase of our relationship. We began building new habits, not out of obligation or duty, but because we wanted to nurture our relationship sustainably. Every evening, no matter how busy we were, we would spend a few minutes checking in with each other, talking about our day, sharing joys and challenges. Simple tasks like tidying up the house, cooking together, or taking walks became opportunities to connect and appreciate each other more. Every small task we completed together reminded me of the power of cooperation, partnership, and that sense of "we're in this together," something I hadn't fully valued before. What became clear to me was that mature love isn't based solely on feelings or promises, it's rooted in genuine companionship. When one of us was exhausted, the other would step in to help. When one felt disappointed, the other would listen. When one was happy, that joy doubled when shared. And when we both put in effort, trust and affection grew stronger, forming a solid foundation for all future challenges. One afternoon, we sat on the balcony, sipping tea, watching the sunset. She smiled and said, "You know, I feel safer than ever. We're not perfect, but I believe we're growing together." I smiled back, holding her hand tightly. "Me too. We've learned to love in a mature way, to avoid conflict, but to know how to face it together. I want us to keep building our future, one day at a time, together." Over the following months, we challenged ourselves with joint projects, personal goals, and sometimes trips away. Every experience reminded us that lasting love requires flexibility, patience, and mutual respect. There were tiring, stressful moments, but instead of doubting or blaming, we chose to see the situation, share our feelings, and support each other. Through these moments, our love was no longer about temporary highs, it became an ongoing journey, nurtured through sincerity, understanding, and partnership. One evening, after a long day, we cooked dinner together, played soft music, and talked about ordinary things. Watching her smile, I realized that true happiness isn't in grand gestures or over-the-top romances, in everyday moments when two people understand and appreciate each other. I reminded myself, we've overcome every challenge, and now our love isn't just about feelings, it's built on actions, maturity, and genuine commitment. I could feel clearly that this final challenge was proof of the strength of mature love. It didn't just show that we were ready to be together long term. It demonstrated our ability to learn, be patient, and grow as individuals within a relationship. We learned that love isn't possession or controlled, it's companionship, respect, and helping each other become the best versions of ourselves. Another evening, as we sat on the sofa holding hands, I said, "I know we're not perfect, but I believe that if we keep practicing what we've learned, we'll be stronger than any challenge. I want to commit to building a lasting love with you." She smiled, her eyes shining with trust. "I want that too. We'll grow together and love fully." In that moment, I realized a true turning point. The final test had shown that we hadn't just overcome the past, we were ready to commit, mature, and move forward together into the future. This period wasn't just the end of old conflicts, it was a new beginning, where love was strengthened through actions, trust, and long-term commitment. Looking back, I felt gratitude for every moment, both joyful and difficult, because they taught us how to love and live together more deeply. We didn't just survive the storms. We learned to appreciate each other, to reflect on ourselves, and to love with patience and maturity. Now I feel complete, hopeful, and reassured, knowing that we are ready to continue life's journey together, building a love that is lasting and lifelong.